And yeah, we're live. Here we are. You're finishing a sandwich bite.
That was fast. That was fast.
I was fast. Welcome to this is the morning edition of Spoken Openness podcast, episode number 11.
Hmm.
Um, Usually the podcasts take place at around maybe 11 a.m.
Your
Vancouver
time.
time.
Yeah.
This is happening at 7 a.m. I Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Hello, good morning. I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I am tired, but I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I'm feeling um, mentally positive about getting up and meditating early, which is the goal. Basically, I feel good about doing what I said I was going to do last night, which is always a pleasure
Right.
when you
Exactly.
set a goal and then you execute it as close
Yeah.
to how you imagined it as possible. However, it doesn't fully affect my physical and my physical tiredness. It's just sort of like a little mental win that I have going on mentally, but that's good. That's something. How's your morning?
But but you don't feel refreshed though. You
Mm-mm.
feel tired.
Mm. I feel tired.
So extremely tired.
Yeah, I'm really tired. But I don't know if it's tired. It's tired,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it's also just discomfort from not, staying sleeping until the very second that I'm like, oh, okay, I'll get up. It's also a learned a learned reaction to comfort level and deciding on the exact time to wake up based on the influences that are making priorities happen for the day. If you have something that you have to do and it means a lot to you, you can get up early and you don't saturate yourself in the physical aspect of it. You just power through, like catching a flight, for instance. It's horrible, and if you have to get up at like 3 a.m. or something like that, you just you just act. You just start doing it. No matter what you're thinking, you don't
That's a great example, actually. Yeah.
yeah, you don't
It's
go,
something you know that you need to do. You
oh
don't
yeah.
question it. And even if it's ridiculous,
Yeah.
it's 3 a.m., you're like trying to kill the fly, but you're executing it.
Yeah, you just do it. You wake up, you make sure your
Sure.
bag is packed, you have your passport, you have like tasks. You got to make
Yeah.
sure that you have the taxi or you get on the bus at the right time. You just you just execute the things you have to do, but then, you
Except when
know,
there's travel, when you need to get to the airport, there's an extra pressure
mhm.
there going on. Like
Mhm, that's true.
you could lose the flight, there's money involved,
Yeah,
but
but what is the system by which that, like, basically it's just a story that you're telling yourself, but that's motivating you to an insane degree. And the story,
exactly,
and you're
exactly.
just
But
you're yeah, the
it's
story,
risk.
it's risk. It's risk. You're saying, if I don't take this, if I don't put on my shoes right now and just leave the house, I might not be able to be out front when the taxi arrives, which means we might get there 5 minutes before. I'm already pushing the time. I know it's going to be busy this morning, and you start developing a scenario where it's important that you go right now.
Yeah,
But don't you think that that's something that you can engineer for scenarios and circumstances that you decide are important, and
100%.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so urgent,
And you
not
can do
so
that with
urgency.
risk. Like if you
Yeah,
we've
risk.
talked about this, like you want to do something, and if you don't do this, you're gonna donate certain money to something, or you're gonna
Yeah.
do anything that makes the story a little bit more high risk so that.
Right.
But do you
I think
think
there's
there's an alternative? I would like
yeah,
to think there's an alternative so that you can motivate yourself without without feeling like you're gonna lose something if you don't do the
right.
thing.
Well, right now I think I have maybe two. Have you seen there's a Nathan For You episode, the Nathan Fielder episode where he tries to start like a motivational thing where people come to him and they want to lose weight and then he like gets them to give him photos that they wouldn't want someone in their life to see, and then he
Wow,
says you come back in X amount of
I've never
time,
seen that.
and if you don't lose the weight, then I'm going to send this whatever scandalous picture to your boss. Or
Is that one of the early episodes?
no, it's in the last season. One of the guys, he's like, what would be the worst thing for someone to see? He's like, my wife, the worst thing would be for her to think that I'm having an affair. So they set up a picture with a random person in a bed that makes it look like something, and then he holds that, and then he's like, if you don't lose the weight, I'm sending this to your wife. So
That's
that's
great.
that's funny, but I don't think the like collateral damage is necessarily the only way to
Exactly.
motivate yourself.
It shouldn't
Um,
be.
no, I think that that notion of describing the future or the reality of yourself if you continue to do things the way that you continue to do things, which might not necessarily be a super detrimental or horrible thing for you, but it might not be what you are uh, striving for. So if you can continue to recognize, I think, where something is not getting you by what behaviors are not getting you somewhere, and reminding yourself of why you want to make certain changes, then you can see, then maybe, I don't know, I'm spitballing, but that could potentially be the motivational factor. I think, that's like
Right,
that's
but
like the self-authoring suite, the Jordan Peterson thing. It's like you develop a future heaven for yourself, future hell for yourself, and then the future hell for yourself is basically what will happen to you if you just continue doing what you're doing now, or
yeah.
or let your habit or the things that could
So
take you.
you're building up your own storyline so that it's strong, it's well-founded, it's rooted in truth,
Yeah,
and that drives you forward, both the past and the future. I don't
yeah.
want to be, I want to be less of this, I want to be more of that, and I'm going there. But
Right, and
um,
I suppose also a positive and a negative element that can both influence you, as opposed to just having something that's like,
yeah,
just focusing on a positive element of it or just focusing on a negative element of it, trying to remind yourself of both factors pulling you and pushing you.
exactly. But then you have to know, you have to be self-aware to a certain degree so that you can develop that. Um,
Right. And that's hard.
but
That's
that's hard.
probably the
Yeah.
hardest part.
So,
Because you have to
the-
make decisions about what you want to do. You have to make decisions about what you value, and you have to make
exactly
you have to make decisions about what you're willing to
what you want.
sacrifice for.
But that's after,
That's
right?
after, yeah.
What you want to happen should be first.
I think that's the same thing, though. The thing that you want is the thing that you'll sacrifice something for. The thing that if
Yeah,
you right, so yeah, you know what you want, but it's also it's you if you decide on something that you want, that's the thing. You can also decide it by saying, what would I sacrifice for? What is worth more for me? And then that, I get
priority.
priority, deciding on a
Yeah,
priority. Values, yeah, deciding on what you value. And that's tough
that's tough.
because values don't always overlap with what you necessarily need to do pragmatically or practically or economically or
Right. So it's either risk or value that drives you to do something you wouldn't normally do.
Mm-hmm.
It's risk if you're gonna lose a flight, if you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna lose a possible business with someone you're supposed to meet at a cafe at 6 a.m. in the morning and you
Yeah.
don't want to do it, but there's a possible um, risk that you don't get an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So risk is related to value. It's not
Hmm.
either or. It's actually both.
It's
It's
that thing. It's on the same. It's the temperature scale.
yeah,
It's connected.
right.
I
It's
love that
connected.
idea because it's so universal. It seems like it's universal, and it ties two things that don't that it connects things that we pretend are separate, and
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. But that's very true. So it's like a risk is a value at the same time as well. Um, because it wouldn't be a risk if it wasn't important, uh, and that's valuable. And
And it wouldn't be valuable if there wasn't some sort of risk involved.
right, if it had some sort of
If
aspect of it that was a rare commodity,
right, if
or
everyone can do it, there's not much value in it,
right, but you can still. But so here's where it gets.
except
There's a
subjective personal value, right?
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a difference there. There is a difference there because you could value nothing, and then that's
Sure. It's up to you. It's up to what you want, what you
yeah, that what you value.
what you value. And it's hard to know. I'd say it's a blessing to know from an early age sort of where you're going.
I'm skeptical I'm skeptical of
Right,
people who
because
know what they
your parents may
from
have
like
forced it on you or like whatever, but I think there's genuine
I see that,
calling,
yeah. I see
genuine
that.
calling, and generally it takes a long time for people to
Hmm.
kind of know why, their why,
Right.
just their overall why.
Yeah, and there's also the thing of I'm sure as we get just the genetic uh, roll of the dice, this infinite combination of variables in genetics. I think we see patterns emerge in terms of personality types and things that people want to do and the types of people that want to do things and the careers that they want to have and the things that they value often. Um, and I think that you can think about that also as like the Rupert Sheldrake morphogenetic fields type thing, where there's like grooves that are put into say there's like grooves put into a metaphysical space of paths basically, and so um, you know see spiders know how to make the web. They just know instinctually the exact designs and creative designs of webs that have been made before by the spiders. I don't know how. I'm not claiming that morphogenetic fields are real. I just think they're an interesting way to talk about things. I don't know
Hmm.
if you've read or much of Rupert Sheldrake's stuff on morphogenetic fields, but
No, not at all.
basically
Sure.
it's like a resonant memory, like it's like a field of a resonant memory.
Hmm.
And he in I think it's a New Science of Life or something like that. He goes through certain anomalies in nature that can't really be attributed to the genetic code that's represented, um, or by DNA. So, he discusses scenarios where it's very hard to make the link between the genetic code and what we see happen in the physical thing. Like, it's slightly unclear whether it's behavior or physicality or something like that. The only reason I
Okay.
bring this up is because you can think about sort of people who maybe he talks about like your balls that are going down, and then they can fall into different grooves that then, so like a so if we talk about people finding things that they naturally connect to and value, it's like they're getting on board some sort of, like a path, they're getting on some sort of thing that they can ride out. And you see people who are just completely committed, and they feel identified with the path that they're on, and they uh, don't have questions about the path that they're on. And it's like this, it's just like this beautiful um, package where you're like, of course that person is doing that. That's exactly the thing that I always imagined they would be doing. That kind of scenario
Mm.
feels like that. Um, yeah, I
It
don't
sounds a
know.
little bit like, I don't know, like that's what I usually used to think when I see someone that's definitely on their path
Mm-hmm.
and and like getting what they want.
Right.
Um, I used to go, yeah, I mean, of course they're there, right? And of course
Mm-hmm.
they're there, and
That's
I'm
also a
here, and
projection,
like
I'm realizing.
it's, yeah, of course it
Yeah.
is. No, that's what I'm saying. It's 100% a
Yeah.
projection. Like, of course,
Yeah.
like um, they know what they're doing. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to shift that projection or perception or idea, because I think most of the time people are really like struggling every day to stay
Yeah.
on their path and to stay motivated and to work hard and to
Yeah.
make things happen, to keep relationships going, to keep work ethic going,
Yeah.
to
Face the weight of life.
pound in work,
Yeah.
face the way of life,
Face the weight of life.
the weight, dude.
Yeah.
It's
Everyone,
heavy. It's
everyone,
heavy.
dude, everyone faces it, man. Everyone's
Sure.
facing it. Um,
Right, yeah. Nobody's just dancing happily around
no.
without suffering. So,
I guess that's where you could discuss ignorance, or the ability to ignore things that shine light on notions of suffering. But that's,
yeah, you might be distracted
yeah,
or numb.
yeah.
That doesn't mean there's no suffering, right?
People on that
It's
hedonistic
underneath.
treadmill, you know.
So, what are you working on right now? Is there something specific, or are you like overall maintaining what we've already talked about? Or is there something right now that has more value, risk to yourself, in where you're trying like to value something more so that you get more of it, and there's also risk because you need to sacrifice some things in order to move towards that new learning, new process, new manifestation of a new behavior.
Yeah.
I just want to
I would
maybe
have to say
bring
that
it
I
to a
don't
more
know.
personal level.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that clear really, and maybe that's a problem. But I think one of the issues about being clear is that you have to be so committed to that thing. If the narrower it is, the more the more the easier it is to fail, because it's specific. Uh, Maybe that's part of it, but I think it's also constantly evolving. I think just the physical, the felt, as great old Terence McKenna would call it, the felt presence of direct experience is
Yeah,
always evolving. Like the way that you interface with the world always feels different in different days.
exactly. That's why I'm asking, like,
Yeah,
right now.
right, right. So I'm just kind of discussing the overall shifting of it all. And there's certain things that remain, I think, that I are still motivating behavioral changes that I would like to make, waking up early, which, I did today, meditating a little bit more, trying to be more conscious in speech. Uh, I'm trying to allow or to entertain ideas on the spot about writing or reading, or and not feel so fixed to prescribed scheduling, because I have a lot of various responsibilities that are overlapping these days, and I'm experimenting with different ways of approaching those responsibilities, and navigating um, productivity. But yeah, I don't know. I think those are all, I guess, just kind of like tasks. I don't know. I feel like um, I'm I'm aware of them all, and I think that that's the thing, is that conversations like this, and the times that I do meditate and reflect on it, and the more that I can stay conscious in the moment, the more that I can remind myself of sort of the things and this perspectives, and the approaches that I would like to be taking. And so I think that is a that is a general direction that I'm maintaining, and I think that's
Mhm.
probably the most important thing.
That's great.
So it's
Yeah.
a very
Yeah, yeah.
roundabout
There's
answer,
and
but how about you?
there's endless habits to incorporate, really.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, there's endless things one could do better, generally, to have a better daily workflow, or like overall feel better emotionally, mentally,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, if that's your thing. Like, but the last 3 months, honestly, I've been thinking about money and business almost all day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've also been trying to like keep up with meditation and the right sleep hours, and try to
Yeah.
keep an organized schedule and diet, and just overall have some sort of order.
Mm-hmm.
But I can say for sure that that's one thing that I am working on and obsessed with right now, and struggling with a
100%,
lot.
man.
That I
100%.
and that's why I was thinking it of bringing it to a more personal um, ground, because we're talking about like value and risk,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in my head like automatically thinking of all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, it's very clear how there's risk, there's high risk if I don't
Mm-hmm.
achieve my goals for me. And there's
Yeah.
also a lot of value in, and I'm not saying like economic value, like personal, emotional value for myself in in coming through what I want to do in
Mm-hmm.
terms of my business and my financial security, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been a real struggle. Like it's been the kind of struggle that I went through years ago when I didn't really understand what the ego was, and how meditation basically worked, noting thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
etc. It's like I'm having to change words that I use for naming wealth, or things around wealth,
Mm-hmm.
that my actual wording of them was wrong, and that made my understanding of the
Mm-hmm.
thing kind of not right. And I think that's overall, if you we kind of WhatsApped on this, I think like 2 days ago, a little bit for like 10 minutes and then
Shout out to
stopped.
WhatsApp.
But yeah, this is a sponsored episode. I'm sorry I didn't say.
Sorry.
but yeah, I guess it's it's um it's a habit forming thing as well, not
Yeah,
just like something you're learning.
right.
It has to do a lot with your current understanding and belief system. And yeah, that's really
Well,
like
man,
what I'm about right now.
yeah. Well, see, dude, I'm about that as well. That if I had the back of the if I had a blurb for a book, I would be about that would be about it as well. I would be about that. I think, I mean, on one level, that is just a universal in society. On another level, um,
What's
we
universal? I'm sorry for cutting you off. I completely.
uh, the existence of money and the relationship to money and the um, complicated nature of that relationship. But on another level, I think that we both have various responsibilities, and the entrepreneurial business development, trying to get something going that you value and that feels functional, and I mean that's like a massive. We're both working on that, um, and yeah, it's money is easily tied to success and various other things, and it's very hard to distinguish and categorize the phenomenon of money in your mind without to do that healthily healthily without corrupt
Yeah. Hmm.
without getting in without com- you have to acknowledge the practicality. Like, you have to acknowledge the straight up practicality. um you know Money is the most functional thing that you can use for most necessities in life. There isn't any one thing that is more universal at providing something for you. Food, rent, all of these things are tied to the one thing. So the one thing isn't necessarily representative of just, currency. It's representative of safety, satiety, like you're not hungry anymore, of
Sure.
all of those things are tied up into the one thing. And so of course it's going to be complicated in terms of how people relate to it. um and I think that setting goals is really important. Personally, I think I need, like, naming what the goal is, where um, you have the value systems organized for yourself in a way that the practicality of money can be realized, but and then your specific, maybe secondary domain of interest in relation to the money, which is your kind of ego attachment, or your superficial or material aspect, is secondary to that. So I think for me, it's organizing a goal of practicality, and then behind that, navigating the metaphysical relationship to money, which has to do with that. I think that has more to do with the value system. The first one is just like kind of a stress inducing, and the step one. Step two is something that I think people spend their whole life working on. But do you agree with those two different elements of a relationship to money? I feel like my speech this morning
Partly,
is all
partly.
over the place.
But then I'm in the middle of trying to change my whole paradigm understanding on how finance works. So I'd like to say, yeah, I mean that's a universal thing. Everyone struggles with money. It's stress inducing and like that's it.
No, but I also said it's unique to, your situation that you're working on and with the situation of being an entrepreneur. I totally understand. Um, yeah.
But I'd like to think there's some sort of financial enlightenment. And that sounds horrible. I didn't even want to say that. But I'm saying it so that I kind of get somewhere with it.
I don't think
I
so,
I
though.
feel like there's a process that I need to go through that's gonna allow me to to
This is what I think.
put myself in the position to be free from the dread that's involved in needing money
Yeah, I think that's
for
practic.
anything.
I think that's the practicality element entirely. I think it's the practicality element. I feel the exact same way. If you can manage the
I don't
practicality
understand
element,
that.
can you pay rent? Do you feel it? Can you pay rent for the rest of the year? And can you, like, how stressed are you about eating at a restaurant? Uh, there's studies about the psychological relationship to money, and after I forget how much money it is, but it's not much more than like paying rent and a few other things. There's no increase in happiness related to money, and I think that we know that, and I think
Sure.
that we understand. um, I think that you can't, quote unquote, realize monetary enlightenment with if the practicality element isn't there, because if you have that baseline stress reduced income level, then I can see room for being able to embody what your
You
what your desired relationship to it would be. But until that happens, there's the relationship to value in actual physical consequences are too great to change. If you are on the plains of Africa and there are actual lions that are there, and they are there, you're not going to be the person going, I think I need to change my relationship to how I see the lion,
yeah.
because he's not a dangerous, he's just a creature living and breathing. And someone else would be like, dude, the lion is right there. If you're trying to philosophize about this lion, the lion is there, will eat you. In the same way, money is like that. If you don't have the practical elements of that sorted, philosophy doesn't matter. It has to do with reducing stress, feeling dopamine response, serotonin, feeling like a member of the community, feeling like you're supporting, feeling like you're succeeding, and succeeding in the societal structure, and supporting everything from remaining strong and constant and having meaning and value in the society. I think that all of these things are natural and serious implications about just the entry level product of production of money on your individual and personal level. So, I mean, I strongly believe that. I don't know
But
if
that's a lot of things. I mean, you're talking about practicality and then bringing up a lot of things that are not obviously practical in any way. So it's actually very complex to have purpose and and what you're saying, money doesn't buy happiness, and I totally agree with
it
that.
does. It does buy happiness. If you are
It
zero,
doesn't.
it buys happiness up into a point. If you are below
That's
it,
not how. It depends how you're defining happiness right now, but you could change that.
Listen, I'm defining the physical, physiological, and studied responses of hormonal imbalances that occur from not having enough money to sustain yourself. If
Right.
you're not in that
If you're
position,
rock bottom
it's not a
and you get some money,
philosophical. It's not
you're
just
better
rock.
off.
It's not rock
Uh,
bottom. I'm saying the stand there. I We can look up the figure, but it's the standard. You can pay for shelter and food,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's that's
Right,
the.
but that's
You don't
that's
think that
what.
that's buying happiness?
No, I don't. No,
That's
I don't.
insanity.
Dude, there's homeless people that get invited to like sleep for a couple of days in a place and have real food. And if they're seriously depressed, because most homeless people are seriously depressed and in a lot of trouble, um, actually, if you give people money that doesn't know how to handle money, they're gonna go back to how they were really fast.
Of course,
And
of course.
and there's
That's a
people with
different
with
problem.
it is, but happiness doesn't have to do with, first of all, by saying happiness, it's almost implied that, happiness is the thing we're all looking for, and if you're happy,
Yeah,
you're
I
all set.
disagree with that. I
I
disagree with
disagree
that
with that
thing.
as well. Yeah. And yeah, if you don't have anywhere to sleep, and then you get some money and you can sleep safe and comfy and have a nice dinner, you're probably happy that night or content compared
I
to yesterday.
I see. I don't agree
Um,
that that's true. I don't agree that just fulfilling those things are resulting in quote unquote happiness. That's not what I'm arguing, and that's what you're imagining I'm arguing. Is that you have the
then
money to
I'm
get those
not
things, then
I'm
you're.
not understanding you.
I'm talking about the fertile ground for the ability of every other element of physiological and psychological happiness. That ground needs to be fertilized, and it can't be fertilized. The potential for any evolving philosophical relationship to material or metaphysical things is predicated upon the fact that you aren't in a fight or flight mode with the fundamental sustaining principles of a human life, which involves food and shelter and and uh, and sustaining those things. And I think that that's the practicality element, and I don't see a way around that. I almost see like the obsession with changing your relationship to the concept of money would only be beneficial if it alleviates some of the stress associated with the practical with the attempt of fulfilling practical boxes of economic relationships, your relationship to economics.
Oh, my battery died. Give me 3 seconds and I will be back. Okay. So yeah, no, of course I get it. How do you think that how do you think I'm kind of missing that, or I maybe just like making a fictional ball of nuts in my head that's just making the whole thing non-practical, because I
I don't think it's a
I hear the practicality thing. I
yeah.
just don't can't put in perspective and like in a personal level. How am I not like going
Okay, answer this in your
past
head.
that?
Don't answer it out loud. Answer it in your head. Right now, could you pay rent for the next 5 months? Just answer it in your head. And not worry about what's associated with that. Like, is that gonna be, debt in any way? Is that gonna it's just boom. If five in the next 5 months, just imagine
Your question isn't clear, I guess, because I
the
can
current
pay.
the current place that you're at. The current place that you're at.
Are you asking if right now I could pay for rent for the next 5 months of rent in advance,
Yes.
or could I make it
Yes.
happen?
No, no, no,
Do
no.
I like
No,
do
no,
I
no.
have the cash for
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Just
Okay.
imagine
So,
in your head, just
all right.
imagine that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm following along. Just
All
wanted
right.
to get that.
Right, right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
Do I have do I have X amount of savings?
yeah, sure.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just imagine that. Just imagine, just now think about that and put yourself in a position where whether yet or where that is the case, and then put yourself in a position where that isn't the case. And then tell me what the priorities are about of what should be a focus in terms of um, philosophically thinking about money, because I think that when it comes to money, the most practical approach and non-philosophical until something like that exists. And that's an arbitrary number. I just put that out because that is a notion that I consider to be something that if that was my situation, um, which as a student building a business, doing many other things is not my situation. If I can imagine that situation, oh boy, then the ground for being able to then work with the relationship to the money, to everything else would be possible. And I know people, there's people who are constantly living paycheck to paycheck their entire lives. And I think that if you ask them, you should be reevaluating your perspective in relationship to they'll be like, man, I gotta buy bread. I have to buy, like, I'm not worried about that because it's so practical and it's so necessary. And I think that is priority number one. And if my point is, if it's true that the more desperate you are economically, the less you think about it philosophically and the more it becomes practical, that principle is scaled, and that should be the case up into the degree where either subjectively or objectively measured through studies you can see exactly where that change happens, where people go and they make more money but they're not quote unquote happier. And then that's of course a subjective experience, but looking at the entire picture subjectively, I think it's practical until you have a thing that is subjective to you or something that's studied that can be confirmed as to this is where practicality ends. All right, I'm here. All right, now my adrenaline isn't going off arbitrarily. Now my hypothalamus can function properly. Now I no longer feel the metaphysical and uncontrollable effects of feeling low on the hierarchy. And you can be in a position to have room to put in effect philosophies however you wish. And
I
and
don't agree with that at all. I'm sorry. That's fine. I guess
yeah,
I would love to just keep talking about this if you're
I
not
disagree.
tired or
No, I
but
disagree as well.
and
But this is
maybe
the
you think this is not a thing to talk about over here. I don't think that way, I guess. Maybe boring. I For me it's like right now, seriously, completely engaging.
Yeah, but what about
And
it? It's I don't know, like I totally agree,
yeah,
but you seem to be talking about it as if you have this profound relationship to it
I
that
don't
nobody
know.
else feels
Joe, dude,
that
I'm not at all saying that. I'm not saying I have like the secret formula, or I'm honestly saying I am trying to transform the way I think about just financial stuff
mhm,
and money generally, not generally, but in my life for myself.
right.
I don't agree that you can only think about money philosophically or in terms of your belief system having something to do with it until you've passed that practicality
I'm
point
not
where
saying you can only do that. I'm not saying you can only do that. I'm saying it's only
you're
going to
saying it's not valuable to do that if
I'm
you're
not saying it's
just
not
trying to pay.
valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable. I'm saying it's not
Okay.
the most valuable thing to focus on at this time in terms of the variety of things that are negatively impacting your life.
Yeah, and that's profoundly engaging to me because I am starting to see that as a relationship. Like I'm starting to see that I do have a relationship with money and a relationship with what I think money is for myself and others, and how I think money works in the world and my environment, and how I think money either benefits me or affects me, creates stress or value, risk value, what we were talking about. And I do, even if I didn't want to, I feel like I'm almost organically having that sort of shift. Like, for example, and that's why I made the meditation analogy of noting before. Um, Noting um, um, every single time that I spend money, and
Hmm.
almost as a meditative experience, I I log it into my thing where I'm documenting every expense,
Mm.
and and I say to myself, is this an investment, or is this like a like a secondary expense that I don't need? Is this benefiting me? Am I using money as a
Hmm.
personal valuable resource, or is
Right.
just this paper thing that I'm purchasing stuff with and doesn't really have much value than the value that it's going to be applied in that specific moment? And like I feel like I could go on in terms of the how you could change your relationship with money in different subtle things where that change, I think, can really help. I don't know who, myself at
Hmm.
least,
But don't you think that that's
to
just being frugal? Because at this point, there's a high risk associated with your value on the money because the money isn't as in abundance as you would as the goal is in order to be fully comfortable. So therefore, what you have is more valued and more obsessed about because that's just the current state of the situation. And so being frugal and thinking about each situation becomes more and more important and critical the because of the because of the rarity, therefore higher value put on the thing. I mean,
what does frugal mean?
frugal means like trying to not spend money where you don't need it and really being conscious about how money is moving for the and why the money is moving and being very um, and making sure that you're doing things most efficiently and cheap and not cheaply but um,
Yeah, you could put it that way for sure. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. But I don't think that minimizes the value of it. Like just saying it's that's just being frugal. But because it's not the same low probability of making money, I guess that's a whole other thing that I can't really talk about. I haven't been there,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to like come come off as saying money is easy. It's just about changing how your perception of it, and then abundance will come. I'm not in
Yeah.
that thing at all, like
Yeah, yeah,
not at
yeah, yeah,
all.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to like make anyone who's struggling with money feel like it's an easy thing to change around. Because what I really feel like is I don't know, and it's not obvious to me that it's it's a practical thing that there's not much need to talk about. I feel like I used to be in a position where the financial system was this like father that like this father figure thing, like culture that has this financial thing going on. It moves things, and I'm like a little small part of it that that has to live my life and my rules and my lifestyle in relation to what that financial thing monster allows me to. And it's almost like a ceiling, like feels oppressive in a way. And I also remember a time in my life when, without knowing it, I was sort of angry at money, and that and would I don't know if you would agree on this, but I'm starting to feel like if you don't like money, you won't have much of it. And if you change your relationship with money in a personal level, then you might start to have more opportunities to be around money and to maintain wealth also, because you could be rich one day and be completely broke in a week if you don't have your shit together. And that's where like mental health and habit forming, like it's all about I think it's really all about your mindset and your belief system, and then how you're managing your daily habits, and all the things we've talked about are related to money. um, but we could go somewhere else. Feels like too much money talk. I guess what I'm saying is maybe it's a failed attempt, but I guess what I'm trying to talk with you and kind of ping pong is, if you can if you can reprogram how you think about money, that doesn't mean you're gonna stop being stressed about paying rent. And I totally get that point. Like, there's a practicality that can't be put aside. It's not all a mental construction, of course.
Yeah. But I think it,
But
yeah,
yeah,
it's not just the stress, man. It's like if you, it's I th- I think there's a tendency to fetishize materialism more the less money that you have. I think that there's stress about being able to physically pay for things. I think there's feelings of inadequacy. I think there's hormonal changes. It's not just stress. I think it's like uh yeah, I just think that
yeah, I'm not saying it's just stress. There's a lot of things that
yeah.
are involved. Um, but I mean, we both have conversations, not in the podcast, where we talk about money, and I'm sorry if I'm like putting you on the spot or like saying we've talked about this or whatever, but um, we've both struggled with money and talked about it, and I feel like we're to blame, not our circumstances. But I'm sorry, I'm like talking in terms of both of us. I shouldn't, and I apologize. I see that in myself though, and I refuse to be like. And I'm not characterizing your argument, not saying this is your argument, but this used to be my argument, and I don't want that argument anymore. And the argument is, uh, everyone struggles with this. It's normal, and it's my circumstances, and almost everyone is in the same circumstances as I am. And if someone is free from money related suffering, then they're special or something else. Because I'm starting to go into like it's about myself, my understanding, my habits. Where am I distracting myself? How am I not you know doing what I'm supposed to be doing? How am I not learning what I'm don't know yet? And because I don't know that yet, I'm not there yet. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And it's like this because I don't know if, at least it makes me feel better, and it makes me feel like I'm more in control. So the little change of noting and documenting every expense and every income and the motive behind it, it's not gonna make me more money, but it's gonna make me more aware of where money as a vital, as a primary vitality resource I'm not taken care of, or something like that, I
Yeah,
guess.
and
Sorry for ranting. Yeah.
my only point is you're gonna keep thinking that your philosophizing is not working, or that it's a struggle to make these change in habits and all these things until the practical elements have been satisfied, and then you'll find it. I think because you're so conscious of this stuff and you're important, then this stuff is important to you, and you don't want to see it as this all-encompassing control thing. So once the practical elements have fully been satisfied, I no question will see the shift happen so quickly for you, uh, that it won't be this immense thing that you need to think about all the time. And I think the practice will be much easier for you in that situation. And you can disagree with me all you want, but I mean, like, we'll see. It's gonna happen. So that's how it is. It's yeah, it's just one of those things that I don't even attempt to do the work because it is a large source of uh, infinite varieties of negative emotion. So I I only focus on everything that I can do practically, and then once I get to a place where I feel like it's all sustainable, then I'll um, then it's much easier. And I know it is much easier because I've been there at least 50 times. I've been an actor for since 2010, and I've been had a comfortable amount of money, and then zero, and then negative, comfortable amount of, and like a mass, like large lump sums,
Right.
and then
So you've
nothing.
been there.
So
Hmm.
I know exactly
Me too.
all of the
Yeah.
metaphysical and physical changes that occur when there's just a baseline notion of sustainable, notion of security. When there is a baseline notion of security, it is infinitely different in the psychological and philosophical um, workings of relationship to money. And Uh,
Yeah, yeah. And this is in a personal level difficult for me to talk about because if you're not talking from a personal perspective, it just feels empty or like superficial and like you don't know what you're talking about almost. And then if you are talking from a personal perspective, it feels exposing. It feels like removing an important part of clothes that would expose you more than others. And um, that's hard for me. And also, if like if if I would try to note something on your part that's personal for you, I would feel like I'm uh, kind of attacking or not attacking, but like crossing over private um, like like private property. Um, it feels that way. I'm just noting it because it's interesting to like note the difference from this topic and any other topic. It has that hard to it's hard to avoid that emotional attachment to the conversation, I guess. But it's interesting, very interesting to me. If you're saying you've had financial security many times, and then that cycle of like debt and paycheck and debt and paycheck. Are you trying to say that that happens because that's life? I mean, are you saying that the job is navigating that, or could we attribute that to your own process?
yeah, I think that, like I mean, there's a bit of both, but like I 100% would just repeat the thing that I already said. I think there's a baseline level that physiologically and psychologically completely changes the game. And until you're in that place, uh, I don't think there's much to be done that isn't just a band-aid. Um, so that's kind of how I feel about it.
Right. Okay. Then what I would finish saying, and then maybe we could take a 5 minute break after this, if you want to. Um, for me, it does make a difference to have a philosophical and psychological and belief related um,
I agree, and I never said that it didn't.
because most people that are struggling with debt cycles, it's mostly because you don't know how to stop getting into debt. Um, and that's very psychological. That's highly psychological. So you can't wait until you're in a position to not have urgency or to be stable to change that, I think.
Yeah, I
But
think
I may be wrong.
of course, a lot of people are like that, but but the approach philosophically will be so much easier if you're someone inclined to a philosophical approach once the practicality has been resolved. There are various environmental situations or in yeah, yeah. It's just
I think it's ignorance, mostly. I guess that's what I'm saying. Mostly it's ignorance. And if you try to move yourself from ignorance, financial related ignorance, to shifting your understanding of it, it's not a psychological trick that I'm talking about. I guess it's just about education and and breaking taboo related with money through exposing yourself to money related information, I guess. Which for me it used to be to have like boring related as like it's much I was much more called to creativity and other stuff than money. I guess that's natural. And now that I'm trying to get that in some sort of new order, which will happen, it's just because maybe that's a process. And then of course it's about the practicality of making it happen, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take five.
Okay.